For 5 years, you made life in that small room, that prison, as nurturing and normal as you could.
Mom, I'm 5. You're 5.
So old now.
You are so old now.
Yep.
Hey, do you know what we're gonna do today?
What?
We are going to bake a birthday cake.
It's hard to describe because the first half all takes place in a 10 by 10 room. The movie goes on way beyond that. We want to talk about the challenges here, Lenny, of making a movie in that kind of space and how you approached it as a director, first of all.
I think our key challenge was that we all felt, and this originates in the novel, but also in our memories of childhood, where the small places that we grow up don't feel small when we're in them. I mean, the little primary school rooms and houses, and when we revisit them as adults, we find ourselves marveling at how tiny these spaces were. But we wanted to be with Jack in the way that the novel is also with the child. That's what gives it its kind of magical, its hopeful dimension. And so we wanted the place we didn't want to sort of open on dungeon. We wanted to open in a child's life, within that life. So all the discussions that we had were about how to achieve that. And I think, so there were various challenges in terms of how we put the shots together, how we chose them, and later, and the design of the space. But in all of that, we avoided any trickery. We wanted it to feel real and believable, and yet still contain something of that magic.
And Danny, what about the cinematography here? And got to be a particular challenge for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was. I mean, I think it's quite exciting to be given such a kind of restricting aspect of starting out when you start out shooting a film. So, but in a way, it's like turning that to our advantage and kind of making the most of the space. And I think for me, one of the things was to kind of always place Bree and Jack in well, not that you couldn't, but always to see corners and the relationship between them and the walls and the space, and to feel that restriction was quite challenging to do.
One thing we discovered, which was very interesting, was that actually the temptation to shoot on very wide lenses, because you think, oh, well, that will stop it from being claustrophobic. Peculiarly, it's the opposite. If you go on slightly longer lenses, you can, when you need to, you can forget about the restriction. You're just in the world of the drama of the two characters, and that allows you to be in Jack's head a little bit more and not be always thinking about, oh God, this is oppressive.
And Ethan, for you, talk about the production design a little bit.
It's an enormous challenge to maintain visual interest for that length of time on screen in a restrictive space. It forces you to look at production design in a completely different way, because it's almost like a lunar landscape. Every inch of it, every crater of it is fascinating and holds treasures for a boy of that age who's never experienced anything else. We started by approaching the idea of captivity as an abstract concept. We looked at everything from the tiniest apartments in the world that are in Hong Kong and Tokyo, to the chambers of the concentration camps, and of course to the real actual stories of captivity and photojournalism from them. And from there, we orchestrated the idea of shooting a room that was entirely modular, where every tile, every floor piece, every 1 by 1 square foot of that set could be removed, so 2 cameras at once were allowed to, in effect, peer inside. The result was that we were true to the concept of never cheating, because the body of the camera might have been outside, but the lens was more often than not inside.
It was always inside, yeah.
Yeah, and always inside. So we never broke that physical manifestation, but we essentially allowed 70 people to create an environment where we could shoot a movie in a 10 by 10 room functionally.
And putting it together to create this whole world there without being claustrophobic was a big challenge from the editing point of view, I think.
It was, but not in the ways you would think. I've initially had reservations. I thought, look, we can never cut outside. Passage of time, are these things going to be difficult? But myself and Lenny work extremely closely in the process of putting the movie together. Like everything, Lenny's pursuit of realism, and he's used that word already, is just so key to his process. So the challenge is actually quite often not destroying what's good. It's about creating, but also not destroying what's good. And sometimes you've got an amazing 12-minute sequence where you go, it's all there. How do we bottle that? How do we bottle that to make it even a really tight cinematic moment?